left hand, with the long thumb separate from the other fingers, is the orchestra's guide to the maestro's interpretative desires. It wheedles the tone from the men. It coaxes, hushes, demands increased volume. It moves, trembling, to the heart to ask for feeling, closes into a fist to get sound and fury from the brasses, thunder from the drums. Through it all, the maestro talks, sings, whistles and blows out his cheeks for the benefit of trumpeters and trombonists. After a concert, keyed to feverish excitement, he often plays over piano scores of every number that appeared on the program. Then he may lie awake all night, worrying over two possible tempi in which he might have taken some passage, shadings in rhythm that the average listener could not discern. He is never satisfied with himself. Some years ago, when he was still conducting at the Scala in Milan, he came home one night after the opera. Mr. Toscanini does not eat before a performance, and his family wait with the evening meal until he joins them. As he stepped into the hall, he saw his wife and daughters walking into the dining room. "Where are you going?" he asks them. "Into supper," of course one of them told him. The maestro exploded. "What? After that performance?" "Oh, no, you're not. It shall never be said of my family that they could eat after such a horrible show." All of them, including the great man himself, went to bed without supper that night. It stands to reason that a man of this type detests personal publicity. The interviews he has granted in the 56 years of his career, Mr. Toscanini, who is 75, began conducting at 19, can be counted on the fingers of one hand. He feels and has often told friends that all he has to say he can say in musical terms, that he gladly leaves to others what satisfaction they may derive from publicly bandying words. But his frequent brushes with news photographers don't come under this head. The existence of numerous fine camera studies of the maestro proves that he doesn't dislike being photographed. Nor does he dislike photographers. But he hates flashlights because they hurt his eyes. This has bolstered the popular notion, based on the fact that he conducts from memory, that his sight is so poor as to amount almost to blindness. Mr. Toscanini is neither blind nor half-blind. He does not use a strong magnifying glass to study his scores, note by note. He is nearsighted, but not more so than millions of others, and reads with the aid of ordinary spectacles. He has always conducted from memory because he believes that having the score in his head gives a conductor greater freedom and authority to impose his musical will upon his men. At rehearsals the score is kept on a stand a few feet from the maestro. From time to time he consults it to verify a point at dispute. He has never been known to be wrong. His memory is, of course, phenomenal. Anything he has once seen, read and particularly heard, he not only remembers but is unable to forget. The other day he and a friend were discussing the concerto played by a certain pianist on his American debut in 1911. Mr. Toscanini remembered it as Beethoven's fourth piano concerto. The friend maintained it was the second. The maestro said, "I recall the concert very well. He was soloist with the Philharmonic. And he reeled off all the other compositions on that program of 27 years ago." To settle the argument, the skeptical friend called the office of the Philharmonic. Mr. Toscanini had been right about the Beethoven concerto and had correctly remembered the purely orchestral numbers as well. He is a profound student, not only of music but of all available literature bearing upon it. A music critic who visited him in Salzburg a few years ago, just before he was to conduct Wagner's Die Meistersinger, found him in a room littered with books on the opera, books on Wagner, volumes of the composer's correspondence. The maestro, who has been coming to this country since 1908, speaks better English than most of us. He knows his English literature and is in the sometimes disconcerting habit of quoting by the yard from the works of Shakespeare, Keats, Shelley and Swinburne. Almost as great a linguist as he is a musician, he coaxes and curses his men in perfect, idiomatic French, German and Spanish as well as English and Italian. He likes reading, listening to the radio, he is fond of good jazz, and driving out in the country. He loves speed. An American friend who some years ago accompanied him on a motor trip from Milan to Venice groaned when the speedometer began hovering around 78. "What's the matter with you?" the maestro wanted to know. "We're only jogging along." Whenever possible he flies. Since 1926 he and Mrs. Toscanini have occupied an apartment in the Aestia, the same suite of 4 smallish rooms. The place is furnished by the hotel, but the maestro always brings his beloved knick-knacks, his miniature of Beethoven, his Wagner and Verdi manuscripts, his family photographs. He has no valet and dislikes being pawed by barbers. He shaves himself, and Mrs. Toscanini or one of the daughters cuts his hair. He eats very little, 2 plates of soup, preferably minestrone, a piece of bread and a glass of Chianti do him nicely for dinner. He begrudges the time spent in eating and sleeping. Like the child he is at heart, he loves staying up late. Occasionally he takes a nocturnal prowl. The other night, after a concert, he asked a friend to take him somewhere, some place where they won't know me and make a fuss over me. The friend took him to a little place in the village. The moment Mr. Toscanini entered, the proprietor dashed forward, bowed almost to the ground and said, "Maestro, I am greatly honored. I'll never forget this hour." Then he led the party to the most conspicuous spot in the room. Mr. Toscanini wanted a nip of brandy, but the innkeeper insisted that he try some very special wine of the house's own making. From a huge jug he poured a brownish red, viscous liquid into a couple of tumblers. The maestro's companion says it tasted like a mixture of castor oil, hair tonic and pitch. Turning white at the first sip, Mr. Toscanini drained his glass at a gulp. Outside, his friend asked him, "Why did you drink that vile stuff?" The maestro said, the poor fellow meant well, and I didn't want to refuse. A man can do anything. Ksiv Leopold Stokowski. Many years ago this reporter was traveling, as a non-fiddling, non-tooting member of the Philadelphia Orchestra, on a train that carried the organization on one of its Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio tours. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Stokowski, the conductor, was secluded in his drawing room, perhaps asleep, but more likely trying to digest 3 helpings of creamed oysters in which he had indulged at the home of an effusive Harrisburg hostess. Mr. Stokowski in those days couldn't let creamed oysters alone, but neither could he take them. In the Pullman smoker sat the handsome gentleman who was then manager of the orchestra and your correspondent. "Tell me," said the reporter, "just between you and me, where did Stokey get that juicy accent?" The manager removed his cigar to reply, "God alone knows." Mr. Stokowski then had been in this country nearly 20 years. He has been here now more than 30 years, and still no one on earth, with the possible exception of Mr. Stokowski himself, can tell you where he dug up his rich luscious accent that trickles down the portals of the ear as the sauce of creamed oysters trickles down the gullet. Surely he didn't get it in London where, on the 18th of April, 1882, he was born. Nor did he learn it in Queen's College, Oxford, where he was considered a bright student, or on Park Avenue, New York, where he landed in 1905 to play the organ at St. Bartholomew's. Mr. Stokowski's dialectic vagaries are among the mysteries in which, for his own good reasons, he has chosen to wrap himself. Another one concerns his name and origin. Is he really Leopold Antoni Stanislaw Stokowski? Was his father one Joseph Boleslaw Copernicus Stokowski, a Polish emigre who became a London stockbroker? Was his mother an Irish colleen and the granddaughter of Tom Moore, who wrote "Believe Me If" all those endearing young charms? Or is Stokey just plain Lionel Stokes, the sprout of a humble Cockney family? Nobody knows. But everybody knows that Leopold Stokowski is one of the world's really great orchestra conductors, a true poet of the stick, though he has dispensed with the baton in recent years, and that he has made the name of the Philadelphia Orchestra synonymous with superb singing, beauty of tone and dazzling brilliance. Everybody knows, too, that he has few peers as an interpreter of Bach, many of whose compositions he unearthed from the organ repertoire and gave to the general public in shimmering orchestral arrangements, and that critics trot out their choicest adjectives to praise his playing of Brahms and all Russian composers. Everybody knows, further, that he and his orchestra have made a larger number of phonograph recordings of symphonic music than any other conductor and band, and that the Philadelphia organization was the first of its kind to dare the raised eyebrows of the musical Tories by going on the air as a commercially sponsored attraction. The list, here necessarily condensed, is one of impressive musical achievements, which many an artist of a more placid temperament than Mr. Stokowski's would have considered ample to ensure his fame. But the slender, once golden-locked, now white-thatched Leopold is and always was a restless fellow, a bundle of nervous energy, an insatiable lover of experiment, innovation and the limelight. Those traits began to come to the surface in 1922, when he had been bossing the Philadelphia band for 10 years. About that time he seemed no longer satisfied with merely playing to his audiences, he started talking to them. There were, and still are, two groups of Philadelphia Orchestra subscribers: the Friday afternoon crowd, consisting largely of stuffy dowagers, and the Saturday night clientele, composed mostly of persons genuinely interested in music. The old society gals went to the Friday matinees because it was the thing to do, while that dear, handsome boy and his men on the platform were discoursing Beethoven, Schubert and Wagner. The ladies swapped gossip, recipes and lamented the scarcity of skillful, loyal but inexpensive domestics. It was at one of those whispering bees, your reporter, who was there, swears it really happened, that, during the playing of a gossamer pianissimo passage, a subscriber informed her neighbor in a resonant contralto, "I always mix butter with mine." Mr. Stokowski did not address the audience on that occasion. He gave his first lecture at another concert, and then he scolded the women not for talking but for applauding. Many of the Friday afternoon customers were in such a rush to catch trains for their main-line suburbs that they seldom remained long enough to give conductor and orchestra a well-deserved ovation. So nobody ever quite knew whether the deadpan Stokey was in earnest or moved by an impish sense of humor when, following the usual thin smattering of applause, he said, "This strange beating together of hands has no meaning, and to me it is very disturbing. I do not like it. It destroys the mood my colleagues and I have been trying to create with our music." Shortly afterward, the Philadelphia Orchestra and its blonde, romantic conductor invaded New York. Their Tuesday night concerts at Carnegie Hall became the rage. The uninhibited music lovers of this town not only applauded Stokey but cheered, yelled and stamped to express their frenzied approval. He never lectured them. But in Philadelphia he continued his extra-conductorial antics. When the audience hissed an ultramodern composition, he told them, "I am glad you are hissing. It is so much better than apathy." Another time, when they booed an atonal piece, he repeated it immediately. He scolded the audience for coming late. He scolded them for leaving early. Once he scolded them for coughing. They continued the rasping noise. After the intermission, on Stokey's orders, the 100-odd men of the orchestra walked out on the stage barking as if in the last stages of an epidemic bronchial disease. All those didos promptly made the front page. Thereafter Mr. Stokowski, who had tasted blood, or rather, printer's ink, came out on the average of once a month with a new notion to astound the Quakers. He shocked them with a demand for Sunday concerts, then a heresy in Philadelphia. He changed the seating arrangement of the orchestra. He discarded the wooden amphitheater on which, since the dark symphonic ages, the players had sat in tiers, and put them on chairs directly on the stage. Then he shuffled the men, making the cellos change places with the second violins, the battery with the basses, There must have been some merit in all this switching, for several conductors copied it. Next he announced that light was a distraction at a concert. Henceforth, the Philadelphia Orchestra would play in darkness. Wails of dismay from the Friday afternoon dowagers. How on earth was anyone going to see what her friends were wearing? At the next matinee the Academy of Music was black as a crypt. On the stage, at each of the players' desks, hung a small, green-shaded light. Then Mr. Stokowski walked out on the podium. The moment he had mounted the dais, a spotlight was trained on his head, turning his hair into a glittering golden halo. The ladies forgot all about their friends' dresses. Why, the darling boy looked like an angel descended into a tomb to waken the dead. Stokey explained to the press that the spot was necessary to enable his men to follow the play of his facial expressions. Most conductors make their appearance in a leisurely manner. Carrying the stick, they stride out on the platform, acknowledge the audience's reception with a courtly bow, say a few kind words to the men, and when musicians and listeners have composed themselves, begin the concert. Leopold changed all that. Lender-like, he leaped from the wings, dashed to the center of the stage, nodded curtly to the customers, then accepted the baton which was handed to him, with a flourish, by one of the viola players, and, before you could say Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart plunged into the opening number. His audiences, particularly the ladies, doted on his conducting technique. His slim, youthful, virile figure was held erect, his feet remained still as if nailed to the floor, while his arms went through a series of sensuously compelling, always graceful motions. The view from the back was enhanced by the fact that the tailor who cut his morning and evening coats was almost as great as Stokey himself. And his hands. Ah, my dear, those hands. There was so much ecstatic comment on those slender, nervous, expressive hands that Mr. Stokowski decided to give the gals a full, unhampered view. He did away with the baton. About the same time he invented a new way of rehearsing the orchestra, the remote control method. An assistant conductor wielded the stick while Stokey sat in the rear of the dark hall manipulating an intricate system of colored lights that made known his wishes to his understudy on the platform. Mr. Stokowski is inordinately fond of gadgets and fancies himself as quite a technical expert. When he first conducted for the radio he strenuously objected to the arrangement whereby the engineers in the control room had the last word as to the volume of sound that was to go out on the air. Radio executives pacified him by rigging up an elaborate set of dials on his desk. These he happily twirled, completely unaware that the doodads were dead. Meanwhile, and please don't lose sight of this cardinal fact, he made transcendently beautiful music. His stature as a conductor grew with the years and so did the repertoire of scores he conducted from memory. This feat involved heart-breaking work, for his memory, while good, is not unusually retentive. In the middle years of his career, he devoted from 10 to 12 hours a day to studying scores. In periods when the Stokowski brain was unproductive of new stunts, his private life and his recurrent rows with the directors of the orchestra about matters of salary and control kept him in the papers. His divorce from Mme Olga Samarov, the pianist, a Texan born as Lucy Hickenlooper, whom he married in the dim days when he conducted in Cincinnati, provided Rittenhouse Square with chit-chat for a whole winter. So did his marriage to Evangeline Brewster Johnson, an extremely wealthy, eccentric and independent young woman, who later divorced him. Mr. Stokowski's doings of the last few years can no longer be classed as minor league musical sensations. They have become hot Hollywood stuff. First, there was his appearance in films. Then his collaboration with Mickey Mouse. Then his friendship with Greta Garbo. Then his 5-month sentimental journey over half of Europe with the dues of the screen. Today he is as big a feature of the fan magazines as Clark Gable and Robert Taylor. Upon his return from Europe in August, Stokey made the most amusing remark of a long amusing career. He told this reporter, "I am not interested in publicity." XXV Serge Kossovitsky. In the official biographies of Serge Alexandrovich Kossovitsky you will find that the boss of the Boston Symphony learned the art and mystery of conducting at the Royal Hochschule in Berlin under the great Artur Nikisch, but in this town there lives and breathes a rather well-known Russian pianist who tells a different story. Long ago, says this key tickler, when he was a youth, he was hired by Kossovitsky, then also a young fellow, to play the piano scores of the entire standard symphony repertoire. He pounded away by the hour, the day and the week, while Kossovitsky conducted, watching himself in a set of 3 tall mirrors in a corner of the drawing room of his Moscow home. The job lasted just about a year, and our pianist has never looked at a conductor since. There's also an anecdote to the effect that, much earlier, when Serge was still a little boy in his small native town in the province of V, in northern Russia, he would arrange the parlor chairs in rows and, with some score open in front of him, conduct them. Once in a while he'd stop short and berate the chairs. Then little Serge's language was something awful. Whether these stories are true or not, the fact remains that Mr. Kossovitsky became a conductor and a great one of the greatest. The yarn of the mirrors is the most credible of the lot, for the Russian batonist's platform appearance is so meticulous and his movements are so obviously studied to produce the desired effects that he seems to conduct before an imaginary pier glass. For elegant tailoring he has no peer among orchestral chiefs, except, perhaps, Mr. Stokowski. It's a toss-up between the two. Both are as sleek as chromium statues. Mr. Stokowski, slim, lithe, romantic in a virile way, looks as a poet should look, but never does. Mr. Kossovitsky, broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted, extremely military and virile in a dramatic way, looks as a captain of dragoons in civvies should have looked but never did. Mr. Kossovitsky's conductorial gestures are literally high, wide and handsome. His wingspread, so to speak, is much larger than that of either Mr. Stokowski or Mr. Toscanini, and he has a greater repertoire of unpredictable motions than both of them put together. Time cannot wither, nor custom stale, the infinite variety of his shadow boxing. Those who knew his history look upon Mr. Koussevitzky's joyous, unrestrained gymnastics with tolerant eyes. They realize that, for years, he was forced to hide his fine figure and athletic prowess from thousands of potential admirers. For Mr. Koussevitzky, before he became a conductor, was a world-famous performer on the double bass, that big growling brute of an instrument popularly known as the bull fiddle. In those days all that was visible of his impressive person was his head, one of his shoulders and his arms. He didn't want to be a bull fiddler any more than you or you, and it's greatly to his credit and indicative of his iron will, consuming ambition and extraordinary musicianship that he developed, according to authoritative opinion, into the best bull fiddler of his time. Here's what happened. Serge was the son of a violinist who scratched away for a meager living in a third-rate theater orchestra. The boy, intensely musical, wished to be a fiddler like his father. When he was 14, his family gave him their blessing, which was all they had to give, and sent him to Moscow to try for a scholarship at the Philharmonic School. He arrived with 3 rubles in his pocket. At the school he was told that the only available scholarship was one in bull fiddling. Serge tried for it and won. He was, so far as is known, the first musician to make the barking monster into a solo instrument. An overburdened troubadour, he dragged the cumbersome thing all over Russia and played it in recitals with amazing success. In 1903, when Mr. Koussevitzky was 29, he's 68 now but looks a mettlesome 50, the Cha decorated him, the only instance in history of a decoration bestowed for bull fiddling. That same year, while giving a concert in Moscow, the virtuoso happened to look into the audience and his eyes met those of a stunning brunette in the front row. The owner of the lovely eyes, Natalia Konstantinovna Ushkova, became his wife 2 years later. Natalia, the daughter of a wealthy merchant and a rich girl in her own right, promised him anything he wanted for a wedding gift. "Give me a symphony orchestra" was Koussevitzky's startling request. The bride was taken aback, for it was with the bull fiddle that he had wooed and won her and she hated to see him give it up, but she kept her word. Now here is where our old pianist comes in. It was at that time, he says, that Mr. Koussevitzky sent for him and began an intensive course of study before the triple mirror. A year or so later Natalia hired 85 of the best musicians in Moscow. After a season of rehearsals Mr. Koussevitzky took his band on tour aboard a steamer, a little gift from his father-in-law. They rowed up and down the Volga. Every evening the vessel, a sort of musical showboat, tied up at a different city, town or village and the orchestra gave a concert, often before peasants and small-town folk who had never heard symphony music before. In 7 years Mr. Koussevitzky and his men traveled some 3,000 miles. Came the revolution. Kerensky ordered Koussevitzky and his men, "Keep up with your music." They did, but it wasn't easy. It was a terribly severe winter, the country was in the killing grip of cold and famine. Koussevitzky and his players starved for weeks on end. The boss conducted in mittens. The men wore mittens, too, but they had holes in them, so they could finger the strings and keys of their instruments. The Bolsheviks made Mr. Koussevitzky director of the state orchestras which, in those early Soviet days, were at low musical ebb. He labored in that job for 3 years, from 1917 to 1920, but he was out of sympathy with the Lenin-Trotsky regime and asked permission to leave the country. It was refused because officials said, "Russia needs your music." The fiery Koussevitzky told the government that, unless he were allowed to travel abroad, he'd never play or conduct another note in Russia. They let him go. Mr. Koussevitzky says that the Bolsheviks robbed him of about $1 million in money, land and other property. In illustration of the state of things that impelled him to leave his native land, he likes to tell this story. A minor Bolshevik official came in one day to check up on the affairs of the orchestra. "Who are those people?" he asked, pointing to a group of players at the conductor's left. "Those," said Koussevitzky, "are the first violins." "And those over there?" asked the inspector, indicating a group at the conductor's right. "The second violins," was the reply. "What?" yelled the official. "Second violins in a Soviet state orchestra. Clear them out." Mr. Koussevitzky went to Paris, where he conducted a series of orchestral concerts and performances of Mussorgsky's Boris Godunov and Tchaikovsky's Peak Dame at the opera. Between 1921 and 1924 he also appeared in Barcelona, Rome and Berlin. In Paris he established a music publishing house, still in existence, which issued the works of such modern Russian composers as Stravinsky, Scriabin, Medtner, Prokofiev and Rachmaninoff. In 1924, the offer of a $50,000 salary and the opportunity of rebuilding the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which had sadly deteriorated since the days of Dr. Karl Muck, allured him to this country. American customs, he now admits, at first appalled him. He was amazed to find musicians smoking in intermissions at rehearsals and concert. This he called an insult to art. He forbade smoking. The players raised an unholy rumpus, but Koussevitzky persisted. "The men haven't taken a puff in Symphony Hall since that time." The next unpopular move he made was to fire a number of the old standbys who had sat in the orchestra for most of its 44-year history. "I want young blood," he cried in his then still very thick accent. "If those old gentlemen want to sleep, let them sleep in the houses." The Boston music lovers didn't like it. To them the symphony is a sacred cow and they regarded the older members in the light of special pets. But when, at the opening of the new season, they heard a brilliant, completely rejuvenated orchestra, they forgave the new conductor. Since then, he has restored the symphony to its old-time glory. Today Beacon Hill has no greater favorite than Serge Alexandrovich Koussevitzky. The orchestra men, too, learned to like him. They discovered that, with all his public histrionics, he was on the level as a musician. He is a merciless taskmaster, but in rehearsals he gives himself no airs. Dressed in an old pair of pants and a disreputable brown woolen sweater, which he has worn in private since the day he landed in Boston, he works like a stevedore. When the pants and the sweater had been with the symphony 10 years, the men gave him a testimonial dinner. Next to Mr. Toscanini, he's the world's most temperamental conductor, but he has the ability to keep himself in check when he wants to. Koussevitzky, says Ernest Newman, the eminent English music critic, has a volcanic temperament, yet never have I known it to run away with him. It is precisely when his temperament is at the boiling point that his hand on the regulator is steadiest. At a concert in Carnegie Hall 4 years ago, he gave a dramatic demonstration of self-control. He was conducting Debussy's prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun when smoke from an incinerator fire in a neighboring building penetrated the hall. The smoke grew dense. People rose, rushed for the exits in near panic. Women screamed. He stopped the orchestra, turned to the audience, held up his hand and shouted, "Come back! Sit down! Sit down, all of you! Everything is all right." The customers meekly resumed their seats. Mr. Koussevitzky swung round and continued playing Debussy's brooding, sensuous dream piece as if nothing had happened. Because he has done so much, both as conductor and publisher, for living composers, he is the high priest of the Sibelius cult, he has been called a modernist. The label infuriates him. "Nonsense," he snarls. "I'm not a modernist and I'm not a classicist. I'm a musician." The first movement of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven is the greatest music ever written, and George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue is a masterpiece. There you are. Make the best of it. Transcriber's notes: the spelling of names and places are noted as having changed between the publication of this book and the year 2004. Chapter I. Palestrina Michelangelo vs. Michelangelo, also in Chapter 6. Chapter 2. Bach Leipzig vs. Leipzig, repeated in following chapters. Lüneburg vs. Lüneburg. Chapter X. Mendelssohn Dreifaltig Kirchhof vs. Dreifaltig Kirchhof. Weimar vs. Weimar. Chapter 13. Berlioz Academy vs. Academy. Chapter 14. Verdi Sant'Agata vs. Sant'Agata. Apennines vs. Apennines. Corsia di Cervi vs. Corsia di Cerviche. Batter XXI. McDowell Frankfurt vs. Frankfurt, Germany. Peterborough vs. Peterborough, New Hampshire. ********** B. Spelling errors found, not corrected. Besieged, besieged. Esterhazy, spelled unaccented twice, versus Esterhazy, spelled with accent 6 times. Carano vs. Carano, Teresa, each spelling used once. Academy, Academy, Scandinavia, Scandinavia. ***************************** See obvious spelling errors corrected. Lüneburg, in one place, to Lüneburg. This spelling found in 3 places, February to February, one day in February, absorbed to absorbed, soon became so absorbed, polish to polish, a Polish emigre, instrumental to instrumental music no longer satisfied, opportunities to opportunities, greater opportunities for an ambitious, financier to fiancé, assisted by his fiancée, touring to touring his hair, asterisk 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 D chapter numbers, Roman numerals, omitted for start of chapters on Toscanini, Stokowski and Kasovitsky, but were present in the table of contents, so the proper numbers, 23, Ksiv, XXV, were entered in the proper places. Asterisk 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 end of the Project Gutenberg ebook. The world's great men of music, story lives of master musicians. Asterisk 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 updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works, by using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg. You agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg. 1.e.1 The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, You will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4 Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5 Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6 You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7 Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8 You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1 Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2 Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3 Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4 Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5 Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and c. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, See sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116, 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways including checks, online payments and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, He produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.